What's up, crew excellence? It's your boy, Justin Strickland, the host of the Ladder Podcast, and I'm hanging out today with another banger, fire. We in this thing, baby. I'm having a great time running the Ladder Podcast and just hanging out with y'all every week. If you're new to what this is a podcast all about leadership. I bring leaders on. I talk about concepts, topics, and just historical truths that are all centered around helping you develop your leadership skill. The leadership is an art. It's something that you can grow. It's like a muscle. And so I believe that everyone is a leader. And I hop on here every week to give you tools to make you better. And so if that's something you're interested in, go ahead and subscribe, smash that like button, and share it with somebody because we're on the road to 500 subs. We cross over 400. We're flying towards 500. That is the goal. And so I hope it just helped me reach my goal. I would appreciate you forever. All right, I got a really, really dope episode today just because I've been seeing just some things in the world, and I've had some really good conversations with some people recently. And one of the things that I've that's been brought up repeatedly, and I've thought about, is how we can use the scriptures today. And when I say the scriptures, I'm talking about the Bible, and because a lot of times we may approach the Bible thinking that it's just ancient stories about ancient people doing ancient things. But if you would change your perspective and you would see that the scriptures hold blueprints of leadership and how we can use those blueprints to impact our modern lives, then you go to the scriptures with a whole different lens and you're able to activate just some of those key biblical principles that we see in those stories so that we can become excellent leaders. And so if you're interested in learning that, today is the day. We're going to go over 3 leaders, Nehemiah, Esther, and Nicodemus. These are 3 leaders that lived at different times, in different places, in different contexts, and they had different things we can learn from their leadership styles. And so I love doing this because my ideal of leadership and learning about leadership is we often cannot replicate the actions of leaders because we all have different gifts. We all live in different contexts. And so, but what we can replicate is their perspective, how they thought, what they were, the way they viewed leadership in the world. We can replicate those things today and use them to impact our lives, our community, and our world. And so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to go over each of these leaders, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about their backstory and how we can learn from their the scriptures and what the scriptures tell us about them. All right, let's do it. First one is Nehemiah. So Nehemiah is an Old Testament book in the Old Testament, and it's about this guy who was living in a foreign land. The Israelites had been conquered, taken away in slavery, and he's living in this foreign land, and he actually had gotten some success. He was in the royal house, a man of renown, and he had influence within this foreign land. So although he was an Israelite, he was influential in a land that was not theirs. And he gets news, right, that his homeland, where his family's from, not even where Nehemiah's from, but where his family's from, is in ruins, and that homeland would be Jerusalem. And so he gets word that Jerusalem is in ruins and that the walls are broken down, which this was significant in ancient times. If a city did not have walls, what it meant was that it was basically for the taking. Walls is what fortified a city and protected its people and cemented it as a place, right? Without walls, it was more so just villages and people could pillage and do whatever they want to those people. And so Nehemiah hears that Jerusalem doesn't have walls, and he's like, this cannot be so. And so he asked the king to allow him to go back to Jerusalem to build the walls. And that's what he does. And he goes back to Jerusalem and he starts to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. And I love this story because Nehemiah sees a need and he just goes and does it. And it's something that I really admire about him. Now, there are 3 things I think we can learn from Nehemiah's story. And if you want to read it for yourself, it is the book of Nehemiah. You can go open up your scripture, Google it, right, and read through it. But one thing I love about the story of Nehemiah is his determination. So he was determined. It was not easy to rebuild the wall. He needed supplies, and so he had to ask for those things. And he faced opposition. There were people in the surrounding towns and surrounding nations that did not want Jerusalem to rebuild their walls because it was a sign of strength. And so they tried repeatedly to get Nehemiah to stop, to get him to falter or to doubt his progress, and he just refused. And one verse said they were trying to get him to stop, but instead he attacked it with more determination. And so, and that's a paraphrase, but basically that's what happened. And so the first thing that I admire about Nehemiah is his determination. And that's something that we all could use. It can be so easy to be discouraged. It can be so easy to start and stop, How many projects have you started and stopped this year? Like, think about how many times you started on that New Year's resolution just to stop it. How many times you started on that business plan just to stop it. We can learn from Nehemiah that when we have something that we know is correct, that is right, that's going to work, to push through those emotions, to push through those setbacks, and to stay determined. Okay, second thing we can learn from Nehemiah is his logistical planning. He had to plan out the wall, what materials he needed, what people he needed, what skills he needed, how long it would take. They had shifts. He had to manage the different shifts they would work, all of these things. And I think too often as leaders, we can be visionaries, but miss out on the strategy. And what I learned from Nehemiah, and this is why Nehemiah is often brought up in a lot of Christian business ethics and speeches, because it was very practical what he did. And I think we can learn that. It's great to have vision, but you have to whittle it down and make it practical to see that vision through. And Nehemiah does a great job at that. And the last thing that we can learn from Nehemiah is hope for others. This is one of my favorite parts that I think is a nugget in the book, is that the walls of Jerusalem being built did not benefit Nehemiah personally. He already had influence. He already had money. He already had comfort in the foreign land. But he realized that his people were not protected, and his people did not have these monicums of comfort that he did. And his leadership it encouraged him to go and help them. And I think as leaders, too often today, especially, you see leaders asking, how will this benefit me? But I think real leadership asks, how will this benefit you? And what can I do? And I see that in Nehemiah's story. And I think it's really, really important that as servant leaders, we look to serve others first and not ourselves. Okay? Second person we can learn from today is Esther. Shout out to Esther. This is one of my wife's favorite books in the Bible, so I hear her talk about it a lot. I love the book as well. Esther, if you haven't read it, it's also in the Old Testament. It's actually, I think, right after Nehemiah, Esther. Yeah, Esther's right after Nehemiah, but very different context. And what the book of Esther is all about is the Israelites have been conquered. This is separate conquering, and they are in foreign land, and part of the rituals in this foreign land is that the king would take several virgins as like a pageant, and one of them will become his wife, because his former wife got to tripping. He was like, nope, I need a new one. And so he does this pageant. Esther is Israelite, is a Jewish woman who enters the pageant without revealing her ethnicity, which I think is interesting. I think it tells us tells us a little bit about their complexion, which the Bible really doesn't care about, but it does tell us like she was able to blend in where they were at. And so she wins. Esther wins the beauty pageant, and she gets to become the wife of the king. Now, simultaneously, there's a guy who's one of the king's advisors who hates Jewish people. He despises them, and he comes up with a plan to kill them all. And he actually gets the king to sign a decree. On this day, we're going to kill all the Jews in our land. And Esther's uncle actually hears about it. He's a prominent Jew in the community, and he hears about this plot from Haman to kill all the Jews. I hope I'm saying is it Hamath or Haman, one of those. And he goes to Esther and he's like, "Hey, we need your help. You're the queen. They're trying to kill all your people. Do something." And I love Esther's and Mordecai's back and forth because one of my favorite parts of this book is when Mordecai goes, two things. Esther says, "Maybe I was created for a time such as this," which I think is always something that we can remember as leaders. But also when Mordecai, I think what he says is, "Hey, be not confused. The Lord does not need you. If you don't do it, someone will, because the Lord will save his people." And I love that reminder because it gets me to a few things in Esther. But I love that reminder just off topic of leadership, just in general. I think a lot of times we overestimate how much God needs us. And we underestimate what a privilege it is to be used by God. And so this book reminds me, and specifically that verse reminds me of that often. And so these are three things we can learn from Esther as a leader. One, never underestimate your influence. Esther was like, "I am just a Jewish girl in the royal kingdom. I just became queen. Like, I don't really have that much say so on the affairs of this nation." And she really underestimated her influence. She really did not think she could save the Jewish people. But she could, and she did. And so never underestimate your influence. Even if you don't have the title or you don't have the money or you don't have the position that you think is required to get something done, never underestimate what you can do when you talk to the right people in the right way at the right time, okay? Number two, always value community over the individual. Esther was like, "Hey, if the king ain't rocking with it, I could die." That's what happened to his last wife. She talked to him when he wasn't ready to talk, and she did. That could happen to me. As leaders, we value the community over our individuality. If you study anything about any revolution, any civil rights movement, the people that are at the front, they know that the community is more important than their individual safety. And as leaders, we have to embody that every day. We have to embody the ideal that if it impacts people for good, that is better than us not facing a negative consequence, right? And so we have to believe that. And then the last thing is that takes courage. Esther was not a robot to where she didn't understand the stakes. She understand perfectly how these things could go left. And that fear was real for her. And you read the book, you see it, but it didn't paralyze her. And too often as leaders, we acknowledge fear and give it too much credence in our life. And we allow fear to keep us from moving forward. We don't take risks because we're afraid. Leadership requires courage. It requires acknowledging fear and moving forward anyway. And that is what real courage is, and that's what real leadership requires, okay? And then last one is Nicodemus. This is a little story in the gospel, one of my favorite stories because the gospel writers be throwing shade at Nicodemus. They say, like, he's a wee little man, he was short. They be talking bad about Nicodemus. Oh, I'm sorry, Zaccheus. It's not Nicodemus. It's Zaccheus. I apologize. They be talking bad about Zaccheus. It's Zaccheus. Zaccheus was a short guy, and he climbs up a tree to see Jesus, and Jesus sees him, and he goes, "Come down from there. We're going to have lunch." And we have lunch, and Zaccheus goes, "Oh my gosh, I've been such a bad person. I'm going to pay everybody back everything they owe," because he was a tax collector. He's like, "I'm giving everything back everybody owes. I'm going to be better from now." All right, that's the story of Zaccheus. A small story in the gospel. I really enjoy it. But my first thing is that we can learn from Zaccheus is just because everybody is doing it doesn't make it right. Zaccheus was a tax collector, and what was common practice for tax collectors in that time, so they would be the go-betweens between Rome and Israel, and they would collect the taxes from the Israelites, from the Jewish people, and then they would pay that to Rome. What was normal practice is, say you owe $10 in taxes, they would charge you 15, and they would pay Rome the 10 and take the 5. And that was how they made their money. That's how tax collectors became very wealthy. And they were getting paid to be tax collectors. They would take that on top of their normal payment. And so just because everybody's doing it doesn't mean you should. Leaders, you should have an integrity and a foundation that is based on truth, not based on cultural norms or what is appropriate in today. If it ain't never been right, it's not right. Okay? Don't allow culture to shift you from what you know is correct. The second thing is, it's never too late to do the right thing. We don't know how long Zaccheus had been cheating people as a tax collector. And sometimes we can think like we too deep in. I've been running this company this way. I done cheated. I done cooked the books. I done did whatever. I've been doing this for a long time. It's too late. I'm too deep in. It's never too late to do the right thing. And Zaccheus was like, because I found out that this is wrong, I'm going to do the right thing today. And I'm going to pay people back. And the beautiful part of the story is Jesus doesn't tell him to do that. He just does it because he realizes that that's the right thing to do. And so it's never too late to do the right thing. You're never too deep in to change and do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. Okay. And the last thing is growth is a part of the process. Sometimes we believe because of what we've done in the past, we cannot change, we cannot be better. What I see in the story of Zaccheus is that whenever you make the shift, you can grow still. You can grow. Just because you were a crooked tax collector doesn't mean you always have to be. And his growth was a part of his process. And as he grew to be a tax collector that had morals and integrity, I would imagine that he had influence over, and other tax collectors would be like, man, why you not making your money, bro? You done fell off, and he had to deal with that. And I would imagine even a lot of Jewish people and Israelites were like, we're gonna go to Zaccheus because he's gonna treat us right. Right? Like, if I'm gonna pay my taxes, I'm gonna pay it to him because he's gonna give me the right number. And he's not gonna cheat me. He's not gonna skim off the top like everybody else is doing. And so those kind of things, that growth is so important, especially when you do it in public, because people can remember. I remember when Zaccheus was cheating me out of my taxes, and he's not doing that anymore. And I want to know what the difference is. I want to know why he grew. I want to understand why he changed. And that is the beauty of leadership, is that people get a front row seat to your journey and your process, and you're able to explain what happened in your life that changed the way you viewed it, that you're viewing things that makes you a better leader. And so these are all things that we can do. These are all people that we can learn from that help us grow as leaders, because our growth is pertinent to our leadership impact. If the moment you get stagnant, the moment you are no longer as potent as you could be as a leader. And so I'm challenging you to use the scriptures, like use these things, use these stories to apply to our lives today in a way that is honorable, that is integrity, and that is faithful to the things we read. Living out these truths today are great ways to anchor your leadership journey. I talk about it all the time. Having a foundation is one of the most important things a leader can have, because the wind blows, culture changes, but if you have a foundation, you will not be moved. And I want you to continue to use things like scriptures and ancient wisdoms and learning about historical figures to impact your leadership today. Specifically, I love using the Bible because it often gives us a window into what godly leadership looks like. And for us at the Ladder and the Hope Institute, we are really pursuing being leaders that honor God and honor His Word. And I want you to have these stories and be able to use these things to do that well. Okay? All right. If you are wondering what's next for the Ladder, for the Hope Institute, this is episode 99. We are almost to episode 100. We have a school community that just dropped. You can join it. The link will be in the description. Actually, I'll put it in the pinned comment. We have merch that's just dropped. You can go buy. And overall, man, just share this with somebody. If you have enjoyed this past 2 years of episodes and what that has looked like for you, man, I would be in your debt if you share this with one person. And I'll be super grateful. So if you made it to this point, go ahead and drop a leader in the Bible who you like and that you've learned from. Drop that comment, because I would love to check out their story and see what I can learn from it. And until next time, man, I love y'all. I'm honored. It's a privilege to do this. And until next time, man, peace.